What's up, everybody? Kevin Bowen here. Live at the Combine, kind of in the adjacent ballroom next to the huge ballroom that's housing all the media. It is obviously Friday around lunchtime. Thought it'd be a good time to check in. Running backs day on the field. So Saquon Barkley just jumped 41 inches in the vertical jump, and he will run his 40-yard dash here, I think about in the next hour or so. The offensive lineman ran earlier today, and then the running backs will get on the field. We'll hear from Bradley Chubb tomorrow, and then Chubb will get on the field Sunday. And the last day for on-field drills and the last day of the Combine is Monday. So I figure we would just kind of recap what's gone on so far the first 3 days here at the Combine. If you have any questions, comments, of course, chime in, and we'll take anything. If we want to talk, Barkley, Chubb, what Chris Ballard said with Andrew Luck, Frank Gore not coming back, Clayton Geather sticking at safety, all sorts of news. It's been a pretty newsy Combine, and you don't usually say that, but when you have as many questions as the Colts do here in 2018, and you're drafting number 3, you have those questions. So, excuse me, but appreciate everyone joining. See Chase, CJ in here. I'm doing well. The Combine is an event that I absolutely love. It's a perfect one-stop shop to hear from all these coaches and general managers, and then finally get to talk to some of these prospects. I thought Saquon Barkley was extremely impressive off the field yesterday. Reading up on him, you hear about, of course, all his accolades on the field and his talent there, and the comparisons to Barry Sanders. But then you hear him talk, and he's such an engaging personality. And the question I have in talking to people down here at the Combine isn't more so of Chubb versus Barkley, but maybe is Barkley even going to be there at number 3? How legit could that interest between the Giants and him at number 2 be? Does Cleveland kind of shock the world and take him number 1? I mean, that's a question if they go out and are able to make a splash in free agency. It sounds like Kirk Cousins maybe to the Vikings, but maybe Cleveland sits there and they think to themselves, okay, we really like Josh Rosen. We really like Sam Darnold. We hope one of them will be there, or one of those two will be there at 4. Do we run the risk of taking Barkley at 1, thinking there's no chance he's going to be there when they pick again at number 4? So tons of I think we still have a long ways to go before Saquon Barkley is definitely going to be there at 3 overall. First, I want to double back and just talk about Andrew Luck and that latest update, and just how surprised I was on Chris Ballard kind of, walking on a little bit of a plank and saying how extremely confident he is that Andrew Luck's going to be ready in 2018. That's something that you don't usually hear from the Colts general manager. It's something that I think we've expected from Jim Irsay, and you can't really believe Irsay in some of those comments. But for Ballard to go there, I thought was rare. He was on with JMV on 1070thefan.com earlier this week, and JMV asked him, his confidence about Luck playing in 2018, and Ballard was like, "Damn right, I'm going to be ready." Or damn right, I feel confident in Luck, being out there in 2018, and that to me was very surprising. I thought Ballard provided some nice detail on what Luck is doing in Southern California with Tom House, the throwing guru down there, and explaining the lower body aspect of this rehab for Luck. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Luck first gets hurt week 3 of that 2015 season down in Tennessee. And he played, I think, 19 games in 2015 and 2016 combined with the shoulder injury. So think about all the compensation that he had to make up for with an injured right shoulder, and your mechanics get all screwed up, and the lower body is something that I think he's starting to rebuild and making sure that stress level is not there on the right shoulder as he moves forward. So I thought that was interesting to hear Chris Ballard kind of explain that, and that's why maybe it's taking a little bit longer than what most people would think for Luck to get back to throwing a football. Because as we sit here now, it's the start of March, and Andrew Luck still hasn't thrown a football. So I understand where the Colts' extreme confidence comes from with Luck, Of course, I'm going to sit here and say that until I see him throw, I'm not going to be one that's thinking to myself, okay, he's surefire going to be back to his normal self in 2018. I need to see him throw. I know the Colts expect him to be back in the building a month from today. The Colts will start their offseason program April 2nd, which is just crazy to think how fast this offseason has flown by. And what is his level of participation when he starts to throw, or when that offseason program starts? Because 3 weeks into the offseason program in late April, you're going to have a voluntary minicamp. Does Luck take part in that? Is he able to throw? Are him and Jacoby Brissett even like splitting reps? Where does he stand in that offseason program? Because that's, of course, going to be vital in learning an offense and just him getting up to speed on an individual level. So, now, those are some of my thoughts just on Luck and where he's at and that latest on him. The Frank Gore news did not shock me at all. I know Greg Doyle wrote a column in the Indy Star feeling like the Colts should have brought him back and Gore wanted to come back. And I think Greg Doyle is a really, really talented rider, but I disagree with that. I think Gore made it pretty clear at the end of the season that he wanted a smash-mouth team, a nasty team, team that had a strong offensive line, and the Colts just don't have that. And if you're Gore, you have one more crack at this. Think about it. You're a 35-year-old running back. Don't you want to go to a Seattle, a Green Bay? I'm trying to think of some teams in the AFC. I mean, maybe even a New England. If they lose Rex Burkhead, Deion Lewis in free agency, maybe they have a running back need all of a sudden. I would want to go to a playoff-ready team to where I get one crack at that elusive ring that I haven't gotten in 13 years in the NFL and have only been in the Super Bowl once. Why did he come here? He came here in 2015 to try and win a Super Bowl. He didn't even sniff that in 3 years. So for me, I would be surefire in wanting to get that ring and wanting to have the best opportunity I could at getting that ring. So I think that's something to just see how it unfolds the rest of the offseason and how the Colts attack that position. I did find it a little bit odd that Chris Ballard didn't mention Robert Turbin earlier in the week as a running back in 2018. He mentioned Marlon Mack and Matt Jones, who Jones, some fans might recall, played in Washington, had a couple 400-yard seasons there. Still young, former third or fourth round pick out of Florida, and the Colts are high on him, but I did find that weird that he didn't mention Robert Turbin, who I thought's been really productive, had the wrist injury earlier this year. And I see Rory asking about whatever happened to Christine Michael. I know he was active for a week before going to IR last summer. Is he a free agent or still under contract? Rory, I'm pretty sure Michael is a free agent. Now, I know he rehabbed all season long all season long in Indy. He was always rehabbing during the regular season. So, I think there's a chance that the scouting department definitely likes him and that he could be back. And I would draft a running back. For those that listen to Kevin's Corner podcast or, heard me on 1070thefan.com, I'm not a huge taking Saquon Barkley in the top 5. Nothing against Barkley. I think he's going to be an unbelievable pro. And we can get into that a little bit later, but I'm of the thinking that you have so many needs on this roster that you have a better chance of hitting on a pass rusher and Chubb at number 3, and then in the later rounds also hitting on running back. To me, I think it's harder to hit on running back in the top 5 and then pass rusher in the later rounds. I think it's easier to hit on pass rusher in the top 5 and then running back in the later rounds. Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard, so many names out there, David Johnson, of these middle-ish round running backs that have been taken in the past couple of years. So that's kind of my thinking with it. I know a lot of people want to compare, okay, look what Leonard Fournette, look what Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, etc. And I think Saquon Barkley is on their level, if not even higher. But what did Leonard Fournette and Jacksonville have? They already had Jalen Ramsey. They already had a stud defense really at every level. Okay, what did the Rams have when they drafted Gurley? They already had Aaron Donald. They already had a player in Robert Quinn. And Dallas, they had that tremendous offensive line for Zeke Elliott. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that you look at this 2018 draft class, and Duran mentions it, it's so deep. that can you hit on a Ronald Jones in the second round, a Darius Geis, Sonny Michel out of Georgia, one of those guys. That's kind of my thinking in debating that. Will Hess just saw Irsay's plane taxi across. What's your guess? Jarvis Landry? No, I don't think so, Will, because Landry is still under contract with the Dolphins, and so you would not be able to bring him in on a visit or anything like that. That would be tampering right now. The whole Jarvis Landry thing, I would want to see what that package would be. I saw someone ask me on Twitter the other day, would you give Miami the 3rd pick for Jarvis Landry and the 11th pick? I wouldn't do that at all. And that's something I kind of like Jarvis Landry. And if he would hit the open market, I think it would have been a nice re-sign candidate for the Colts or on the outside market. But my question is, trading for him, all of a sudden, you are having to go out and give up one of these picks that are so valuable. So I would probably not be in the Jarvis Landry sweepstakes. I think the Colts, might have interest, and that's something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks because we know the Colts are in a dire need for receiver help. I kind of like their wide-out targets to complement T.Y. Hilton. Duran says, what do you think about the guard from Notre Dame, Quentin Nelson? Heard Quentin Nelson talk yesterday. I would not take a guard at number 3. Again, a guard can have 60 great plays out of 60 in a game, and no one notices. And Bradley Chubb could have 1 out of 60 good plays, and everyone's going to notice, and that play can change the game. A strip sack could be the play that all of a sudden ends an opposing team's drive and sets up a scoring drive, et cetera. I just think impactful positions I take in mind in my draft philosophy. I know probably most GMs don't, but that's kind of my thinking. If you want Quentin Nelson, I would trade back. Will says, weird that Irsay's leaving during the combine. Owners really don't come to the combine or aren't really affiliated with the combine too much at all. I mean, this is strictly an evaluation time for the scouting department and the coaching staff. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't – I would be shocked if there's more than like 3 or 4 owners here from other NFL teams. So, no surprise there. Jim Irsay maybe wants to head out to Beverly Hills or get out of Indy right now with this weather. A couple other things I wanted to get to. Rashaan Melvin, I think the Colts want him back. The question is obviously going to be, what does that market look like for Melvin? Just signed with Drew Rosenhaus, the mega agent. And that's something that I think that with the Colts changing defensive systems, there was a question on, okay, does Melvin's man-to-man principles, do those fit with Matt Eberflus in his 4-3 scheme? You think of Tampa 2, you think of those older Colts teams that just needed guys that could kind of come up and tackle out of cover 2, but I still think they're going to play a good amount of man, and I would bring back Melvin, and it sounds like the Colts have some definite interest in doing that. Again, free agency starts a week from Wednesday. March 14th is when the new league year begins. So that's kind of the latest on Melvin. Right now, he seems to be the most likely re-sign candidate. If you look at the free agents, and I'm currently writing a free agent watch kind of an article series on 1070thefan.com. I encourage you to check that out. We've had 5th name went up today. That was Jack Muhort. Outside of Melvin and maybe Pierre Desir, it's hard to make a strong argument for a lot of re-sign guys for the Colts here in 2018. Of course, they already had Adam Vinatieri, and so I think that was a no-brainer, slam dunk. But that's something to watch here in the next week or so as we start to see some re-sign guys from around the league. Few questions here. Kevin asks, how much – Kevin Locker, good to hear from you, Kevin. How much say will Irsay have on number 3? Feels like his input would be the only reason Colts would take Barkley over Chubb. I'll say this, Kevin. I do think Chris Ballard would take Saquon Barkley. I do think Colts would have a lot of interest in Saquon Barkley. But if Barkley or Chubb is there, I don't think that Irsay would all of a sudden have that much sway. Of course, Irsay had that quote, after Chuck Pagano was fired about drafting that Edgar James type to put him with Andrew Luck and to get there at 3. I think that the Giants at number 2 is a real possibility for him. And I want to look back into what Chris Ballard and Frank Reich said over the past couple of days. I just still think it's so hard to find a pass rusher. And I know there are some questions. Will, I see some of your comments about, tape on Bradley Chubb is trash. I mean, he's put up numbers in the ACC that, Mario Williams never did, Shaq Lawson never did. I mean, it's very impressive what he's done in that conference over the past couple of years. And he's a 4-3 defensive end that can play every down. And you don't get that in college football very often. You don't get a 4-3 end that has pass rushing traits that Chubb has. Is he going to wow you with Von Miller or Robert Mathis speed? No. But he's going to be able to play every down and still be a double-digit sack guy. I've made the comparison before. I think he's kind of Joey Bosa-like, or Everson Griffin, or some of these bigger kind of 4-3 ends that you see in the NFL. Eddie says, what should the Colts do if Chubb and Barkley are both off the table before they draft? Eddie, I immediately trade down. Because at that point, let's say Barkley goes 1, Chubb goes 2, and you're sitting there at 3. That means the number 1 quarterback in the draft is still on the board. So you need to trade back and get that king's ransom of picks. It's not like Minka Fitzpatrick or Quentin Nelson or somebody like that. It is a lock to take at number 3 in that scenario. So I think I would trade back in a heartbeat. I think the Colts would get a lot for that number 3 pick. Yash, good to hear from you. If not Melvin, who would be our number 1 cornerback? Well, I mean, right now it'd probably be Quincy Wilson. And that's why I think Melvin and Desir are important to bring back. You just need some depth. It's a position group that injuries happen, and I think you just have to create depth there and giving some veterans in that secondary for a really – I think it has some nice talent on the back end of your defense, but you're void of a lot of veterans. So it's kind of my thoughts there. Chase, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be your level of concern if Jacksonville signed Teddy Bridgewater? Probably like a 3, 4. Yeah, I mean, sounds like Bortles is going to be their guy in 2018. And I would think, where's Jacksonville drafting? 29, I would assume, late first round. Why don't they draft Mason Rudolph, Kyle Falk, whoever that 5th or 6th quarterback is, draft him late in the first round, and then see what you can develop while Bortles, has this very front-loaded deal to where they can get rid of them. So I think Jacksonville's in a very win-now mode to where they like Bortles. And I think that the combination of him in 2018 and then drafting a quarterback probably makes most sense to me. I'm just not 100% sure that Teddy Bridgewater is ever going to get back to that level of a player, and that's what I would do if I were Jacksonville. Michael Armstrong, good to hear from you. Michael, what positions do you think will be focused on in the late round picks of the draft? I mean, if I were ranking positions of need for the Colts draft-wise, because I think free agency, you got to get 2 O-linemen. You need a wideout. You need an inside linebacker as well. And then draft-wise, I think pass rusher. I think running back. You need an inside linebacker again. Linebackers just in general. I'd probably go for another wideout. And then I think you need probably O-line to see if you can develop someone. I know you've kind of swung and missed there in recent years, but that would be kind of my thought process. I know Chris Ballard loves the trenches, and as you're switching to a 4-3, I think you need some young, kind of more 4-3-ish defensive linemen. So those would kind of be some of my positions to attack. Colts will draft in every round this year, have all 7 of their picks. No compensatory picks here in 2018. Joey, I appreciate the tie. It was picture day at MS Communications before coming over to the Combine. So threw that on. Duran, would you sign Teddy as a backup? I would not sign Teddy Bridgewater at all. Jacoby Brissett, you are the backup quarterback. Andrew Luck, if you're healthy, you're the starter. And Brad Kaya, you are the 3rd quarterback. Quarterback does not need to be addressed at all, I think, in the offseason unless Andrew Luck's right arm falls off. It's my thought process there. So we'll give it another 5 minutes here, trying to catch some people on their lunch breaks here in the Eastern time zone. Few things I want to mention. I kind of talked about the needs in the draft. And in talking to personnel people from around the league, I wanted to give a little free agency insight as, again, that'll start a week from Wednesday. It sounds like Jacksonville will franchise tag Allen Robinson their number one wideout towards ACL week 1 of last season. So that takes another top wideout off the market. I think Sammy Watkins from the Rams will hit the open market. And I think the Colts should look hard at him. I think he gives you that big body. Again, in free agency, there's always going to be red flags with every player, and Watkins has not lived up to the top 5 hype that he had coming out of Clemson, but I would still look at that pick very, very seriously. So those are kind of a couple names to watch. Andrew Norwell is the all-pro guard from Carolina that I know a lot of people are high on, and it seems like Carolina, similar to LA with Watkins, they just don't have enough money to bring him back. They re-signed Trey Turner, their guard. I know they released Kurt Coleman a couple days ago, but listening to Ron Rivera and asking him that yesterday, it doesn't seem like they're definitely going to have that money to bring back Norwell, and that kind of goes off of what I've said all along. The Colts need to get 2 offensive linemen, in my opinion, in the next couple weeks, and then get a wide out and get an inside linebacker, and that kind of goes off Matt's question here. What positions will we look to in free agency instead of drafting? You look at the strengths of the draft. Great quarterback draft, great running back draft, great interior lineman draft on both sides of the ball, O-line and D-line, some decent linebackers. Definitely not the same defensive draft that we saw last year when it was like 67 of the first 100-some picks were on the defensive side of the ball. That's why I look to immediate needs in free agency as O-lineman. You need surefire day one guys there, guys that you can count on to play next to Ryan Kelly and Anthony Costanzo. So that's why I think 2 offensive linemen. Inside linebacker, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Anthony Hitchens connection from Dallas with Matt Eberflus coming in here and implementing a 4-3 scheme. You have the familiarity with defensive coordinator and Hitchens, and then you have those 2 on the same page at the most important position in getting your entire defense on the same page from a communication standpoint there as your Mike linebacker in that 4-3 scheme. So wideout as well. I think wideout you can probably double dip free agency and the draft, but I think you need a proven complement to T.Y. Hilton, and you've just swung and missed with Donnie Avery, Akeem Nicks, Darius Hayward-Bay. Who am I missing? Kamar Aiken. You've had so many swings and misses at the receiver position in free agency. Duran asked, what do you think about Tavon Austin? Not really. I mean, I'm sure Colts fans remember the 2013 game at Lucas Oil Stadium when Austin just burned the Colts, but he just has done nothing out there in LA. I think, if you were able to get like a Taylor Gabriel, Paul Richardson combo, I mean, that's pretty good right there. I know the Colts are, again, still really high on Chester Rogers, although we didn't see much out of Chester this year. A couple more minutes. Again, I wanted to mention free agency watches on 1070thefan.com. I've broken down a lot of how I would weigh some of these re-sign candidates for the Colts with free agency starting on March 14th. Keep in mind as well, we heard from Saquon Barkley yesterday. We've got video up on that on my Facebook page, on Kevin Bowen's Facebook page, and then on 1070thefan.com. We got a written article with a video in there on Saquon Barkley and just the dilemma of taking a running back. And then we'll hear from Bradley Chubb tomorrow, and we'll see on-field drills for Barkley today, Chubb on Sunday. Those are kind of some of the updates with the Combine coming to a close from a media standpoint, more on-the-field stuff here in the next few days. A couple more questions to get to. Martin asked, any chance we trade away the pick? Martin, good to hear from you. I don't think so. I think when you look at this draft, there's not a lot of top-end talent. Maybe not the same sort of kind of blue-chip talent at the top 5, top 10. So then you run the risk of how far back do you go? Because I kind of see 4 quarterback-needy teams in the draft. Let's say Kirk Cousins goes to Minnesota, and that seems to be some of the talk right now. You then have Denver at 5 overall, the Jets at 6 overall, Arizona at 15, and Buffalo has 21 and 22. Trading back to 15 with Arizona or Buffalo 21-22, that to me seems way too far back to go. Now trading back 5 and 6 wouldn't be that far. I don't know. You wouldn't get a lot in return. But is there a chance that Chubb would still be there at 5 or 6? Do you really love Quentin Nelson? Do you think that you would go with that? So those are a couple things to keep in mind. Yes, really appreciate the insight. How's the golf game? Unfortunately, it's pretty non-existent. Played on vacation a couple weeks ago, but boy, Indiana this time of year does not offer me many opportunities to put the peg in the ground. But hopefully, this somewhat spring-like weather we've had in the past week, not today, but in the past week, will lead to some warmer days. Duran, I think Zach Brown is a free agent. You would try to sign him? Sure. Yeah. Zach Brown, Zach Fulton, Brown an inside linebacker, Fulton an offensive guard, some Chris Ballard history in Kansas City. Those would be a couple of names that I would watch. So, Randy, I see you there. Thanks for joining. I'm going to wrap this up. Like I said, 1070thefan.com. Plenty of written content over there. If you missed this, I'll be on later today with Dan Dockich at 2 o'clock on 1070 The Fan, and with JMV around 3:30 as well for my normal Friday segments. I have a podcast on Monday along with just a huge combine notebook, just kind of my 10 takeaways of looking back on this week and looking ahead to free agency that starts on the 14th. Offseason program starts April 2nd, and then the draft rolls around April 26th. So appreciate everyone tuning in. If I didn't get to your questions, I'll double back here in the comments section and reply. And you can obviously either shoot me a message here on Facebook or hit me up on Twitter, Bowen1070. So everyone have a great weekend. And for the latest, definitely stick to 1070thefan.com.